Welcome to Pemberley Farm. Well, this is the next installment of our series on September being Preparedness Month. And I know that a lot of people next would go automatically to food, but I'm going to go next to water, because we have to face it. You could have, 10 million pounds of all the fancy freeze-dried food in the world, and if you don't have water within a week's time, it's not going to matter because you're going to be dead anyway. So, water is the next thing we're going to talk about. And you'll notice behind me that we're at our pond, one of our ponds. We have two ponds. You also notice it's kind of muddy, but Hurricane Sally went through here the day before yesterday. So all of the mud and clay in the little dirt road we live on went down into the creek that feeds our pond, and so we have muddy pond, but it'll clear up. But anyway, so we're blessed in the fact that we have this pond, we have another pond across the road, and we have a creek that, like I said, that feeds this. And so not everybody has that option, and I realize that. If you are in a city now and you're thinking about moving out into the country, water is important. Just so you know, water is important. And if you can find a place that has water like what we have here, that would be a great thing. So you might say, well, why do I have to worry about that? I can go buy bottled water. I can buy it in a gallon jug or whatever. I got water everywhere. Well, a couple of years ago, we lived through Hurricane Michael. And yes, we did eventually get people in, and they were giving away, water by the case, and that's fine. But if that event had been more widespread, then we might have had more trouble getting the supplies that we need, because the stores were not open, the banks were not open, your debit cards didn't work. Whatever cash you had on hand, whatever stuff you had on hand for a number of days was all you had. And so, you may not live in hurricane country, but you live somewhere. Everywhere in this country, there's something, whether it's tornadoes or ice storms, like we said in the first video, there's something, earthquakes, that would cause you to have an emergency. And again, even job loss. So, but what if it was a widespread event? Again, we never expected a pandemic, so you can't know what's to come, and you shouldn't live in fear, but you should think, what if? What if is a big concept. What if this happened or that happened? So you have to fill in the blanks of what the what if is. But water's an important thing. So if there's some reason that if you live in the city and your water system stops working, in the big town close to me, that was a real problem, that they, because of Hurricane Michael, when they had problems with water. So you can't just take it all for granted. When we had it, we were without power for 16 days, and a lot of them were without power for a lot longer. We have a well. Well, our pump is electric. So, you just have to think about those kinds of things and think about how much water. Well, the general rule is 1 gallon per person per day. But that doesn't include washing your dishes, that doesn't include flushing the toilets, all of that kind of stuff. That's really just basic drinking and a little bit of hygiene on your hands. That's not taking a bath or even a spit bath, and or flushing a toilet with a bucket of water. So those are things that you need to think about. So we're starting here to just show you our muddy pond and to emphasize water is the most important thing before food, even, because you can't live without water. You can live a good while without food. So our next stop, we'll talk about some of the things that you store water in, and we'll talk about some of the ways to purify water. Okay, so like I said, they suggest for the minimum a gallon of water for each person per day, and that doesn't include everything you'd need water for. But think about it this way. For a family of 4, for a 3-day weekend, that would be 120 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. Where are you going to store all that water? Just for a 3-day weekend. So water is an important thing, and you really need to think about that. Now, you can store water in all kinds of ways. Here we have like a 5-gallon bucket that's dusty because it's been in the barn. So you can store these, and this is 5 gallons, so you don't, you didn't have to have as many of them as if you had this, but you still would have to have a lot. And like I said, with Michael, it was a whole lot more than 3 days for us. So there's a lot of things that you can do. You can buy cases of bottled water and keep them stacked up if you want to, and we do that. But a lot of times we keep them in a refrigerator so that when we're out on the farm, we can have some with us that's cold. But the thing is, in an extended period of time, or if God forbid there was some really bad something that happened, you may have to have water for a long period of time. You may have to be able to access water for a long period of time. And so you really need to think about that. One of the ways that you can collect water is through rain catchment. If you have gutters and downspouts, you can set up a rain catchment system. Even if you don't have gutters, if you have a valley in your house that comes, and it's going to come down, the rain will come down that valley, you can set up a catchment system under that valley to catch your water. There's a lot of things that you can do. So, and we're going to insert here a picture of a 1,500-gallon water tank that we have that's not set up. So see, that tank would do us no good because it's still just sitting without being hooked up to the creek that it is going to be hooked up to. But even if we didn't drink that water, things happen in the summertime here. If there's no power to run water and you're dependent on the food in your garden, then that gravity-fed water, because I live in a hilly place, and that gravity-fed water can water my plants, my vegetable plants. So there's a lot of things to think about in this. How would you get it? How would you store it? How much do you need? How can you continue to get it for a long period of time? Long meaning from a month to 6 months, whatever it is. Your mileage may vary on that. You may think that the world's going to go on just hunky-dory forevermore, or you may think the end of the world is the day after tomorrow. So and then there's everything in between. So you do what it is you think that you might need to store for, but it's never foolish to have something on hand. Never foolish for that, whether you believe in the end of the world as you know it or not. So, also, you need to think about how to purify water. So if you catch water off the roof, or if you go out into the pond and collect water. Now, if we went out right now, as muddy as our pond is, what we would do before we, let me back up and say this. We have several of these bottles. We have straws. We have pitchers that are filters. They're water filters, and they're high-powered water filters. And this is just for a, one that you take along with you. We have them smaller, we have them, and we have them bigger. And then a lot of people have Berkey, or the one that My Patriot Supply sells. I can't think of the name of it. Alexa Pure. That's on my list to get one of them, but I don't have that right now. But if I went out into my pond water and dipped that up, now we've used it before to flush the toilet during Michael, but right now it's real muddy, and I would not want to even run all that mud through one of these filters or the Berkey or anything. What we do first is strain it through like a bandana or a t-shirt or some kind of cloth. Strain it through that first, and then run it through your purification system. So what if you can't afford these bottles of these fancy bottles or the Berkey or all of those kinds of things? There's other ways that you can purify your water. You can do it with bleach, but now understand, bleach has a shelf life, and after 6 months to a year, depending on how you've stored it, the potency of bleach is not as much as it would have been as far as killing things in the water. So you have to be aware of that. And so the other thing is, now there's all manner of pills and liquids and the ion lights and all kind of stuff that you can buy to purify water. I would suggest now is a good time to check those out. Right now, Google is your friend. You can find just about anything if you search the internet for it. But find those things and decide on the thing that best suits you. And I would say, you know, the old saying is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Don't just pick one thing. Have a backup. Okay, have a backup. So you figure out how much water you think you'll need. You think about how you're going to collect that water, because you can't buy enough water to stack for an extended period. So when that runs out, how are you going to collect water? Then how are you going to purify the water? So you have to decide what's best for you and your family, but those are things you should think about. So just, you know, you don't want to, and I'm not going to give you all the formulas, because there's some that say 8 drops per gallon. There's some that say 10 drops per quart. You do your research. You can do research right now. You can still do research. So if something happened and you couldn't, you need to have all that beforehand. And you need to have it written down. Don't just think you're going to remember it, because in a time of stress and a disaster, there's a whole lot you don't remember. There's a whole lot that you'd just be surprised how, when you're upset and your whole world's turned upside down, you just don't think right a lot of times. And it takes a while before you can, you know, take a deep breath and get it figured out. So I just encourage you to think about it now. Don't wait till there's a problem. Today is the day. So today is the day you should figure it out. See where you're going to store it. See how you're going to collect it. See how you're going to purify it. All of those things are important. And next time, we'll talk about food. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so glad you did. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do, and hit the little bell so that you get all the notifications when we put up a new video. And if you liked our video, please hit the thumbs up. And you can find us on Facebook. We're Pemberley Farm. We're Pemberley Farm Homestead here on YouTube, but we're Pemberley Farm on Facebook. And we'd just be glad for you to join us and walk through all that we do here on our little farm and with our family. So I'm so glad you joined us. God bless you from Pemberley Farm.